Greetings of peace, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. This is the first meeting in January 2026, and today we will be discussing a very important topic on how can we co-create MRN values, responsibility of how to prompt AI in a good way. So let me welcome Mr. Samuel Abimbola, the co-director of the Mentoring Research Network. And please, Mr. Samuel, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning, Dr. Mona. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you let me know if you hear me well? All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Interesting opening conversation with Japhet there. I was running around trying to make me a little tea here. So I couldn't speak up at the time, but I was listening to everything Japhet was saying. It's pretty interesting. Really interesting his perspective. I think it will make for a very interesting conversation later this morning. But yeah, thank you for having me here, and greetings to everyone. I think we have Helen and Delise and Kajoja also in the room. Greetings to you all. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So we'll start with a gentle check-in to welcome all the members joining here. Japhet, Helen, Delis, and Kajilja, just feel free to unmute and let us know how you have been doing since the beginning of the new year and what do you expect from this meeting.
All right. So let me start. And actually, my new year started very exciting. I think very exciting, and many good things are happening to me. And have received 2 new offers for work, and one nationally and one international. And I think it's a good one. And one of my articles has been accepted, and is a good one for me actually. So I'm just so happy these days, and and all of them were beautiful offers, and I'm just so happy actually. So it was like a good, it's like it's a good way to start the new year actually. And I have a lot of projects that are going on personally. I have a lot of other collaborations and for research and going on. I think my network has increased for research, and I think it's something that I'm happy about. So for today's other conversation, I know it's going to be a beautiful one actually. And so my expectation is that I will get different views, from people, and because that is the beauty of having different people discussing on a particular topic. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Japhet. And Helen, how has it been? How's the start of the new year been, and what's your expectation from today's meeting?
Hi everyone. So my new year started on a busy, good note, alhamdulillah. So basically this January, I'm leading a big project that we're implementing in a couple of communities. So most of the time I'm in the field with no network, with communication with other people. The other thing is that I think with the coming in of MRN, I've also increased my network. So I have a lot of projects I'm working with different people, apart from the ones that I started in 2025. So basically, I see a busy year ahead because in 2025, I was a bit on mute when it comes to different activities and projects. But this year, I think I'm all geared up for 2026, hoping it will bring something good. For today, I think for me, I think these are the kind of intellectual discussions we should be having because we can't run away from AI in this present world. And I hope at the end of this meeting that I get to understand how others view the use of AI, especially when we're writing. because you still find people still using it, as much as people would say don't use AI, but there are people using it and we can't run away from it. Either way, even 0.5% of the writing, you still find people are using it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a great discussion on AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll come around to that. Nice to see you. It is pretty interesting from the two of you who've spoken so far this morning, Japheth and Helen. It looks like the year's been on a roll. There's this feel that you've hit the ground running, and it's been a very, very almost hectic but satisfactory start to the year. So that's good to go, and that's good to know. Yeah. Perhaps would see something different from Delhi's, or would it be the same? Delhi's has been your new year.
Good morning.
Good morning, Denise.
My new year is going generally well. I started it going back to school in Oslo. Quite very cold, but I can manage. So far, currently, I'm working on my research project. So I'm expecting to gain more from this session because AI and writing. No, I am never confident when using AI, so I expect to leave the meeting more confident.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Thank
Hopefully,
you.
Nice. Thank you very much. Good to hear that. But wow, my oh my, in Oslo, it's really cold. I'm not even having to deal with that. And this morning I woke up and I had to make me a very hot pot of tea, and I
Yeah.
infused it with some cardamom and all the herbs I could lay my hands on, and some honey, because I've been down for the last 2-3 days with a cold, and no ma, it's really something. But yeah, good to have you with us. And I think on my screen I see Kajelja. Hi Kajelja, how are you doing this morning? How's your end, and has been the start of the year?
Yeah, I'm really excited for being monitoring research network, and I would like to say you all congrats on the first kickstart of January 2026. And before saying uh, about my research, I would like to really appreciate the organizing and leading team, Professor Mona and the team, for managing and handling well yeah, each and every activities in the last year. So I would like to thank all of you. And currently, just I'm about to start my PhD journey, and looking for different uh, potential collaborators. And I'm also continuing what I was just started in the last 2025 year. And I hope for today's section we will focus on the AI and MNR community values. So I look forward to learn a lot from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kajelja, and I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. And so, without much ado, I think we can step into today's meeting and begin the conversation. Hopefully, we can flow very quickly through the slides and have a more direct interaction with the people in the room this morning. And so, we're looking at AI and what it portends for us as individuals, as researchers, and as a community in the Global South. And one of the things we would like to start today's meetings with would be just a reminder of our agreements when it comes to online events like this or webinars that we organize. We always say it's good practice to keep all devices muted. And also, if you know that wherever you are, it's pretty noisy, or there could be interference from the background, it would be good to also mute yourself. If Because very often we have people from the Global South joining like this with internet restrictions. If your internet bandwidth is not very strong, you can keep your cameras closed and just unmute when you need to speak. Importantly, would also like for each and every one of us to think locally, but consider the impact globally. And that's something we say it's global. And so it's global, but it's also local. And beyond that, we want you to focus on issues and not personalities. By that, we mean that we're not here to, disparage one another or talk down on one another. We dissect the subject matter on the table without necessarily causing any harm to the person you're interacting with. Beyond that, we need to make sure that everything we say here is verified and reference checked. And so, yes, there are lots of information going on nowadays on the internet, and it's sometimes a very slippery slope to step on. But as much as possible, we should try to our best ability to make sure we verify everything that we either say here or put on our WhatsApp platform or say in reference to this event. We also very much value the strength that comes with diversity, the difference in opinion, difference in perspective, difference in perception, and difference in positions. And we believe that all of this is what makes us a stronger community. We're very much aware of the time, and we know that it's the start of the day. We'll try to do this as quickly as possible so that we do not hold anyone here longer than is necessary. At the end of today's meeting, feel free to put your feedback on the WhatsApp group, direct messages to Dr. Mona via email or via WhatsApp to me. And would like to, we always enjoy those feedback. It helps us to improve on what we already have. On the screen there, you see the code of conduct. It's not very much different from what I already mentioned earlier. It's the same code of conduct we've abound by for the last 2-3 years already. If anyone wants to read it more personally, you can always find it on our website and you can go through it. All right. Today's meeting would follow these very brief agenda. We start with, we already have gone through the greetings and icebreaking. We start with this presentation on the responsible and ethical use of AI and the cognitive sovereignty that we should have as Global South researchers. And after a short eye break, we'll come back with the presentation and quickly wrap up the last two parts, which is the protecting planetary health and predictions of AI bubble burst, as well as co-creating MRN community values. So the objectives that we intend to achieve by the end of this morning's discussion is one, and to ride the tiger of modernity without losing our cognitive sovereignty. Secondly, we'd like to prioritize meaningful, high-quality, solutions-oriented research over rushed quantity. And third, we want to make sure that we honor indigenous knowledge and community wisdom as Global South researchers. Hopefully, all of these three will touch upon and accomplish by the end of this morning's discussion. So let's start with these very interesting slides and this very interesting, I'd almost say it's an activity, but let's look at it this way. We often hear the coronavirus pandemic divided our time into BC and AC. Now, as we know it, BC would always be before Christ and AC would be after Christ, right? But we have this little tweak and it says, now C stands for corona. So we're in a different age where it's before the coronavirus and after the coronavirus. And if everything will be back as before, this is what the pandemic of the past teaches us. And so it's just a classic division, right, between how you view the world, whether it's an optimist or a pessimist. But the truth is this, we can all agree that the pandemic really did shape our world and it's changed everything we have around us, right? Things are no longer how it used to be, the kind of interactions we used to have. In fact, this platform via which we're meeting now was not so much of a thing before the pandemic. It wasn't so much of the webinars and online meetings. People were more used to in-person conversations and in-person meetings. But the pandemic seems to have radically shifted and changed the speed of innovation within human, whether you're looking at it psychologically or sociologically, the stratosphere of human interaction, it's been very sporadically shifted. But that's an interesting one. So yeah, let's see how that then affects every other thing that we see as humans. How far has this global AI malaise progressed? Yeah, that is an interesting question. And before I begin to ramble on and on and on, I'd like to say something. As you see each of the slides, I'd like you to make a personal note of what message it passes on to you, right? This is a slide Dr. Mona and I have gone through, but it could be that what we see in the presentation is slightly different from what you see or how you interpret a slide. You could make a note of that, and whether perhaps during the tea break or during our conversations, you can bring us back to review these slides and rub minds together and see if perhaps there's a different perspective to the whole idea. But let's start with this AI therapy, and this is in the healthcare sector, and it definitely applies to every other aspect of human intellectual domains. It's beyond healthcare. But in the AI, in the healthcare sector, we see that there is this push and pull as to whether people should accept AI therapy. Just yesterday, I was in a conversation with some of my colleagues, and we're talking about telemedicine and how to integrate telemedicine into the current landscape of healthcare provision and systems in the place where I am. And one of the things people are talking about is it's not about whether or not telemedicine is good, it's as to what about it is actually being what about the user privacy is being protected. And so if I use telemedicine and I put all my diagnoses online, and my doctor connects with me online and everything, what if someone hacks that system? Do they get to see everything about my medical history, or am I protected? And so we have this pull and push as to whether or not people are willing to use AI in healthcare. But we're dealing with a pandemic on another pandemic. It's not just the coronavirus. The coronavirus was more or less the foundational pandemic upon which every other pandemic is being built. Right now, we have an intellectual pandemic. We have an AI pandemic, and it will not be the last. In fact, if what we see so far is anything to go by, it would only continue to increase. So how do we then keep ourselves sane, keep our intellects acute, and in this tide of pandemics? One, let's look at this. We're in a confusing time, indeed, and it's important to be able to report things from an optimist point of view, so to stay positive. AI in research, what do you think about it? What's your point of view about AI in research? We would have maybe a minute to think about it and 2 or 3 minutes to talk about it. And I'd like to hear everyone just say something very briefly, maybe a sentence or two. What's your viewpoint about AI in research? So take a minute to gather your thoughts, positive, otherwise. And in a minute, I would call out the names as it appears on my screen. And I just want a very quick and very brief position on what you think about AI in research, whether positive or negative or both.
I can see Japhet. We can start hearing first from him. What's positive things about AI in research?
All right. So for me, I see a lot of positives, right? I see a lot of positives that we can use AI to fasten our work, because definitely that's the importance of technology. We want to do things faster. We want to save times, and things that we can automate, we should do it. For example, in choosing a suitable journal to send my work, AI is a very important tool for me. And I can use it in that particular way. It makes it faster, because as an early researcher, like on my first publication, I spent 1 month. I could not find a suitable journal for my work, because I have to look at the price and the one that I can pay for money. I have to be realistic to see if the journal could accept my work. It was a difficult situation for me, but I think as of now, it's no longer a problem. There are a lot of sites now that use AI, and more are being developed. So there are a lot of other positives. And AI can help you do, like I'm a data analyst, right? I do analysis for work. I use SPSS and whatsoever. And I realize that AI also helps me in doing that. For example, it's not like I feed the data to the AI. No. Just like, for example, of recent, I received a data analysis job. And as I was trying to analyze, I realized that I encountered a particular area of the using SATA questions, like I'd select all that applies. So in some of the questions, only one option is correct. In some of the options, 2 are correct. In some of the options, all are correct. So, and I'm supposed to score it at the end using SPSS. when I write it in ChatGPT helps me to understand that there is a particular way to do it in SPSS. Then I told ChatGPT to give me the exact steps on how to do that. I followed those steps and it did it perfectly. Personally, I try to check it, because after doing the analysis, I use Excel in order to confirm if that analysis is correct. I realize that it is correct. So there are a lot of positives in research in different areas. Just in summary.
Thank you so much, Jafet. And feel free, everyone, to write on the chat box. And as we have only 1 minute left for this activity, feel free, any of you, to unmute and share with your contribution. Any applications you are using, even anything that you can give us insights about.
Thank you. I also agree that AI has many positive sides in research by making the work easy. For me, I'm using Stata for data analysis. I can also ask ChatGPT for which codes I can use to do a kind of analysis. It is really helpful, but we cannot also forget the negative side of AI. Some researchers can use AI to create datasets, like imaginary datasets, and they can go far to the extent they can even publish results from those data. So I think AI can also contribute to plagiarism on a big extent. The positives are more than the negatives.
Thank you so much. And Helen?
Hi. I think I agree. AI has a lot of positives, as my two colleagues have already said. But then for me, I'll concentrate much on the negative side. As much as AI is helping us in a lot of ways, I
But
feel
then
like
this activity is particularly on the positives. We will come later on the negatives. So if you just can,
okay. So
project on the positivity, the positive side, as this slide says, that AI can be a rescue for some of us. Yeah.
Okay, so for the positive side, I think it improves access and speed, because there are times that when you're writing something and then you're lost, the moment you probe in the AI, use ChatGPT, whatever, they at least give you guidelines on how best to go about. I would give an example of analysis. I'm not so good at the use of R, and I've been practicing, and it has been easy for me to analyze data because of AI. So I agree. AI is helping us a lot on a positive side when it comes to research.
Thank you so much, Helen and Kajilja. Or we can hear from Esmond or Dr. Cosmos.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Wanda. Yeah, so I also agree with my colleagues that, AI use is helping us as researchers. Let me just bring this example in. Sometimes when you are doing your literature review, you realize that you don't know where to start from. Yeah, but their consensus, for instance, is an AI tool. So these tools can help you to be able to map up the articles or the studies that can easily help you to be able to start looking for, literature, to be able to build your literature review, and then to also search for gaps. I know there are some AI tools that when you put an article in, it can help you to be able to summarize if it's the findings that you want to get a summary of the findings, the methodology. Yes, it just sees it out for you. So that makes it easier or faster for you to be able to have some of these things around. But I don't know whether this is appropriate for me to also pass this comment. Yeah, but I believe there should be responsible use of these AI tools, because sometimes the information that it gives you, you need to go on and then check and make sure that it is the correct information or it is a correct reference or citation that it is given to you before you go on to be able to use it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cosmos. And please feel free to unmute Kajilja or Esmond. And I think I can give it back to Mr. Samuel. You can continue.
Yeah, let's go to ChatGPT.
Yes, exactly. So now
Uh-huh.
grab your drinks, and yeah,
I've got mine here.
I have some lime water, like lemon water.
I've also got mine here. This is not very obvious. Yeah. So yeah, just like everyone has said, we are in that age, and there's something about AI I would like to also mention here. It's the fact that you see, it's a part of our lives already. And there's no shying away from that. It's already part of our world. And it's always been. The thing is, perhaps it's never been as mainstream as it is today, but it's not as though it has never been, right? And I think we're on this wave, right? This tidal wave of time where you either roll along with it or you get swept away. And yes, there is a philosophical position of saying you could also row against the tide and stand out from the crowd. But the truth is, I don't think that artificial intelligence is one of those places you want to, row against the tide, because it's an overwhelming tide. It's coming to everything we do. This Zoom platform we're using has AI tools integrated into it. The Gmail platforms, Google platforms have AI integrated into them. Statistical analysis, whether it's Stata or SPSS or R, are all integrating AI support systems. And so it's almost impossible for us as researchers to survive without AI. And that's what this slide is showing here, right? And so you see in ChatGPT, and it's showing, it's more or less even in our tea now. And so it's your cup of tea, it's my cup of tea, and it's always going to be there with us. But beyond just these things, there are other ways to look at the positives of AI. For instance, there's this cafe in Japan that hires paralyzed people to control robots so they can still have an income. That is thanks to artificial or the advancement of artificial intelligence. There is the world's first AI hospital, and China has shut down tools during nationwide and college exams so that the students can, make positive use of their time and not depend too much on AI. Beyond that, we also have research papers that are beginning to, speak or at least show things about AI. One of the ones, as you see on your screen, is Trust Me, I'm a Scientist, which is a very interesting one. It was a very interesting one when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's really good, because you get on social media today, and at this point, we begin to crisscross the positives and the negatives. And so, let's just flow with it. One of the things I observe nowadays is you get on social media, Twitter, for instance, and someone comes online and just posts something, permit me to say, really ridiculous. And you're thinking to yourself, where does this person get this kind of information from, or where's the source? And then you go into the chat section, or I go into the chat section, that's what I do, just to see what are people saying. And you get people come and say, oh, that's a fact. I know it is a matter of fact. And luckily, sometimes someone says, how did you get that fact? Where did you get the fact from? And they have no source. All they have is, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. How can I trust that you know what you're talking about if you cannot, present me the fact, right? The evidence to back what you say is a fact. And I have counter opinions that are actually backed by fact. And that's the world we live in. Future doctors study aging as a treatable process, the pharmaceutical world. AI is creeping in so strongly that now on social media, there are bots. And very often people don't even know. The person you're arguing with on Twitter, the person you're going back and forth with on Instagram, is not even a human being. It's an AI bot that has been set up to respond, right? They call it rage baiting. They just put a very ridiculous point online, and people come in and start to go, that's nonsense. Why would you say that? It's this, is that. And the person is not even there to respond to you. And a bot is responding using specific algorithms it's been trained to follow. And it just keeps regurgitating, and rage baiting people. And why do they do this? Because it can be monetized. And that's one of the things you will see in AI. But it goes way beyond that. AI is inventing academic papers in today's world. AI papers that don't even exist. Dr. Mona, please, can we go to the next slide? You see this here. You see AI and science, a very interesting one. AI inventing academic papers that don't exist, and they're being cited in real journals. And I think a few months ago, Yusuf brought this to my attention. I think we're in a meeting. Dr. Mona might correct me if I'm wrong here. And Yusuf, who is an academic director, had brought it up and said, someone published a paper, and he saw the paper, and while reading through this published article, he saw that the whole article had been written using an AI tool. And at the end of the article, it also had the prompt, if you do not like these, I can also refine, I think something like that. You know how ChatGPT says, if you want me to also refine this and give you further this on this, I can also do that kind of thing. And the prompt was left in the article, and it was submitted to a journal, a peer-reviewed journal, and it was peer-reviewed. And none of the reviewers caught that blunder. And it was published with the blunder in the article, and it came online, and there was a lot of backlash, and people were beginning to pick out so much of the repetitive algorithmic response in that article. You're going from the methodology to, let's say, the result, and you're seeing that there's a repetition of something, the way AI repeats itself over and over and over and over again. And that's the age we're in. More than half of researchers now use AI for peer review. Yeah, but is there particular guidance that is put in place to make sure that these things are positively used, right? Especially considering the fact that my biggest concern, my biggest worry with all of these AI in science, my biggest worry is the fact that we are outsourcing what we should do for ourselves to AI. And I feel that we're in an age where, and those of us in the global south have to be very, very careful, and we have to be very alert and very aware. Why do I say this? There is this quote that I used to very much appreciate when I was, I think it was in high school, I encountered the quote, or maybe in the university, and it helped me a whole lot. It is the fact that I think it was one of my lecturers who put that on a board once and said, if what is being sold to you has no price, then you are the price. And he was talking about social media at the time. He says, when they give it to you for free and you do not pay for it, and they say you can use this thing for free, right? And you get the free use of a thing. He says that you are the cost, right? You're the one, they are buying you, you're selling yourself. It's not free. And I think AI also has a very similar feel to it, that there is the human loss, the loss of our humanness in the use of AI. And that's where we need to be very careful. An expert warns that this is a destruction of knowledge, and truthfully so. And since 2023, for instance, I've had to deal with undergraduate students, sometimes even graduate students, master students, right, who are turning in term papers. And you're reading through the term papers. I'll cite an example. I had to look through this group of papers, and it was in a class, and I said, okay, my supervisor, who's the professor, had given them something to do, and then they submitted, and I was reviewing the submissions, and I'm in class with them. Some very interesting submissions had been made, and I was reading through the submissions, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I mean, these guys are really smart. And then we get into class, and I'm beginning to make points based off their submissions, and now I'm inviting them to buttress their positions. Lo and behold, more than 90% of them knew nothing about what they submitted. I mean, they made the submission. I admired the submission. I'm inviting them to buttress their submissions. They know nothing. I mean, they don't even know jack about it. And it was really surprising to me. I was like, what on earth? How did that even happen? The thing is this, they know that if they use AI, we would very much pick it up. And so what they do is they use artificial intelligence, and then they rephrase. I think they take it from something like ChatGPT and put it in another tool that humanizes the whole thing so that it feels more like a human submission. And then they put it in another one based on what they explained to me. It went through 3 different softwares. I think it went from ChatGPT to one, and then to Turnitin to check for plagiarism and everything. And at the end of the day, it feels very human. And I was surprised. I was asking them, if you have the intelligence to go all the way through these back doors to avoid the examiner or your supervisor knowing that you use AI, why did you not commit that time to really reading up on what you submitted? You could as well have, you don't even need to read anything else. Just read what you submitted, and no one would be the wiser. But we are in an age where intellectual, right, decadence is the order of the day, and we're losing it as a species. And that's where we need to be very, very careful, because the cost of our humanism, right, is in our intellect. And as I often say, the limit of my word is my vocabulary, is the limit of my world. And so I cannot tell you about a word that I cannot think of in my thoughts. And so if language-wise I am restricted, then I cannot think beyond the restrictions of my language. The same thing with science. If in the confines of my intellect, I am restricted in how I think, restricted in the width of my thoughts, then I cannot imagine beyond that. And that is the problem. And can we go to the next slide? Yeah, another interesting one. What data set does this person resemble? Maybe you can leave, because I don't want us to waste too much time, you can leave comments in the chat, please. Right, and just looking at this algorithmic error, the AI error, pattern recognition represents replaces interpretation, prediction replaces presence, risk scores replaces stories. Okay, I see Japheth's hand is up. Maybe we can take that one quickly. Dr. Mona, is that okay? Yeah, okay, Japhet, please.
All right, and thank you so much, for raising such beautiful points. And I think what you just said is the reality, right? Is the reality and is the pure truth. And that we are losing intelligence. But then, as for me, I would say, rather than say that we are losing intelligence, I would say that the focus of intelligence is being like it's changing, right? Right, is changing, because I once read a book that defines what we define, like how people define intelligence is in different ways, right? He talks about somebody that has not gone to school but is able to craft a beautiful piece of art that can be sold for millions. That is also intelligence. But perhaps if you tell that person to write an article, that person cannot be able to do that. So that one is another intelligence. Then perhaps we look at the person that can recite the Quran, right? It can recite, can understand, can do a lot of things. That is another intelligence. If you tell that person to go and write an article for a journal, the person cannot. It's like the person trying to show, it's like there are different areas of intelligence. And I would say, definitely, definition of intelligence has been changing, like from different era. And I know, like me and you, maybe from my age, what we see as intelligence, because I won't share this story, like in our last meeting, that in my own, the high school exams, like there is a particular exams we write before you go to the university, the JAM. I was to write mathematics in that exams, and they refuse us to use calculator. They refuse us. To them, using calculator will feel like you are not intelligent. You are not using your own intellectual property. It's like you're wasting your brain. But what of today? Who can give you a mathematics exams? I will tell you that I've attended some exams, in the laptop, they will say you can pop up the calculator and calculate, right? So it's like it's a changing landscape. Like I'm just seeing it from another point of view. So a time is coming in the nearby future, maybe in the next 10, 50 years, where the smart people are the ones that are able to use the AI in order to get what they want to be achieved. So this is another area that we can see, because another part of the brain is being developed. Rather than me thinking this paper, how can I turn it into like this? How can I read this sentence into this? It's just like the way we used to do qualitative analysis then. When you want to do coding, you have to cut pieces of paper with colors. You cut you cut pieces of papers, you paste them on your walls, trying to get codes, and now you can just go into NVivo, and NVivo will mark those things. So your ability to use NVivo now, we see it as an intellectual property where people do analysis and they get paid and things like that. So I'm just trying to see it from another point of view, but your point is definitely right and correct. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Japhet. Thank you very much for that contribution. I think I very much agree with you on your submissions and what you talked about. But later on in our conversation, when we have the interaction, I would like us to agree on something. It would be on what intelligence is. What is intelligence? What is knowledge? While there might be a fluid definition to these terms, there is always what I consider a foundation, a reference point, right? if you try to define intelligence in the 21st century, and you juxtaposition it with intelligence in the 17th or 16th century, of course, you've got to be fluid in how you define that. But in the application of knowledge to solving a task, this is a rigid definition of intelligence that goes from generation to generation. But we'll come to that in our conversation, in the discussion, to see it's beyond. When we say that we're losing intelligence, it's not so much of the fluidity of the definition, it's the applicability of what we have towards problem solving. But we'll come into that so that we don't lose too much time. Or we could use, you and I, we could have a private conversation during the coffee break. We don't keep others, because I see we're already about 46 minutes into this meeting already. So, but nevertheless, there's this global pandemic, right? The global pandemic of AI, and there is the problem with the cognitive offloading when thinking is outsourced, and that is the big thing. It's one thing to say, as a student, as a researcher, as a Global South researcher, because it's more peculiar to us as Global Southerners, that I need to maximize my time. And so if I have to write a scoping review, for instance, I don't want to spend 3 weeks searching for papers in different databases. I'm going from Scopus to the different databases, PubMed and all of them. And so I outsource these tasks to ChatGPT or Gemini or any other tool to help me gather all the data. And then I go to Covidence and I begin to work gradually, and it saves me time. Good. That's a positive one. But when we talk about cognitive offloading, it is not these kind of usage of tools to make activities easier. It is the fact that when you ask someone, what do you think, which is a cognitive question, what do you think about the situation in this part of the world? What are your thoughts on this subject? They are unable to engage in a cognitive dialogue on a subject matter without recourse to artificial intelligence. And that is something we're beginning to see today. And it's coming into academia, it's coming into science. You're speaking with a scientist on a subject that is known. I mean, something like diabetes, right? And diets. Okay, what's your opinion? Do you think that the shift from Mediterranean diet could influence the incidence of diabetes as we see in this part of the world? This is a very simple conversation to be had amongst researchers. Unfortunately, we're beginning to see that quite a number of researchers are at this point not able to sit down and write a 100-word essay on that kind of topic. Why? Because all of that, the thinking process that goes into putting words together into coherent arguments, we lose in that. And it's very subtle, you see. It's a very subtle thing. When you begin to use things like the clinical calculators, diagnostic algorithms, auto-populated nodes, and all of that, differential diagnosis and all of this, which are good, it's helpful. But what happens is the human brain is no different from the muscles of our body. When you disengage these muscles from doing rigorous works, they begin to bloat. The same thing happens with the brain. If you disengage your brains, if you disengage the human brain from engaging in the rigor of thoughts and action, it begins to bloat up and it loses its connectivity. The kind of neural path that you had developed for the last 20 years, in the next 5, 7, 10 years, it begins to die off because you don't use it. For instance, good example that you referenced was maybe preparing for JAM and you're not allowed to use a calculator. What was the benefit of that? The benefit is that your mathematical acuity, your ability to do arithmetic, to solve arithmetic problems was heightened. And so because you don't have something to help you, you had to be able to think 300 divided by 5 times this. What is tan 35? You had all of that wrapped up around the finger for you to be able to use them as soon as you need them. The problem that actually brought is that you spend time, you lose time having to recall all of this. And sometimes there's the problem of cognitive recall, and you cannot recall even though you know. Yes, that's a problem. However, now what we're dealing with is we can quickly get answers. But what happens when those answers are not available? Would the human brain be able to take on the task? For instance, if I'm trained as a doctor, and as a doctor, I use these clinical calculators to, diagnostic tools to do all the diagnosis. And that's how I was trained. Some 20 years from now, we have a global meltdown in the power sector, and there is no access to the internet or no access to electricity. It doesn't stop people from getting sick. Will the doctors of the time be able to diagnose correctly without these tools? That's where the cognitive offloading problem is coming in. And you see, hardware is depicted in science and technology, and it goes beyond just the software component. It's our connection with these tools as human beings. AI, very much good. Yes, we cannot shy away from that. I started this conversation on that premise. It is positive, and we need to ride the wave of the positivity that can be gained or garnered from artificial intelligence. Nevertheless, we need to be very, very careful of the loopholes, right? The pitfalls that we need to avoid in our use of AI. And it's the same way we say in the global south that look at obesity in the global north. Look at a problem like that, and we say, oh, it's because of their lifestyle, it's because of their diet. I think if we're being cautious about picking up some of these things from the global north, we also need to be very cautious about the kind of things we adopt in the use of artificial intelligence. We should. Okay, can we move past this slide, please, to the next one very quickly? To the next slide, please, Dr. Mona. Yes, this is a beautiful one, I like. And so, look at this slide. No, sorry, the last one, the one with the heart. Yes, this one. I want everyone to reflect on this slide for 30 seconds. Just look at the slide for 30 seconds. Good. The slide before this was on hardwares, and this slide shows the hardware. And so it's the connection between the hardware and the hardware that makes us humans. Robots are unemotional. No matter how much of human emotion we try to infuse into robotics, it would never replace the natural empathetism of human beings, the way we are created to feel empathetic, to feel emotion. It's our hardware, and that is one thing we can never outsource. That's one thing we can never. And so now let's dig a little bit deeper into the root causes of the problem. The biggest one is anthropocentrism. That tendency to perceive the world as revolving around humans only. It's just our world. It's nothing else matters. It's us. We're the only ones. But you see, when you look at what the earth is from a Cartesian view of nature, you realize that the universe does not revolve around us. We're a minuscule component of a very broad universe. In fact, scientists are beginning to say that the Milky Way is just a speckle in the galaxy. It's like it's one galaxy in a sea of galaxies. And so just imagine for once how tiny we are, or almost insignificant we are, when you look at the bigger picture that goes beyond our world. I mean, that goes beyond our galaxy, that goes into the world where the galaxy of galaxies actually exists. How minuscule do we become? But very often we lose sight of that, and we just, we sink into this world and we think everything revolves around us. In fact, the sun is rotating around us, and the moon must revolve around us, and every other human being must revolve around us, and we're the center of it all. No, there is more, and that viewpoint where we think that we are the alpha and the omega of the universe, and that we can make and destroy, and that we can create and uncreate, I think is one of the biggest problems we're dealing with as humans. This technocentric model that is dominating modern society. And we're beginning to see that though we're trying to use artificial trees to suck carbon dioxide from the air, all of these would always have backlash. You're looking at social radiations and solar radiation management problem, with all the different, and even this solar radiation problem was a problem. I was in a meeting with in Cyprus with the guys in Cyprus, and they're talking about using solar panels, right? Using solar panels to trap heat from the sun to generate energy and put in the buffer zone and all of that. And when we began to go into the nitty-gritty of the interventions, right, of these systems and how they could actually, the kickback it has on our ecosphere, it was something of a beholder for me, because I began to realize it goes beyond just, it's easier said than done, right? When you look at, oh, it's just a solar panel, but there's a whole lot more than just that single solar panel in the world. Dr. Mona had a very interesting position on this particular slide, the cloud fractions, precipitation, humidity. Dr. Mona, would you, if you would indulge me, I'd like you to just say
Yes.
something on this slide and not me.
Actually, the reason why we are transitioning into this kind of conversation, that AI has been used to manipulate the climate on a large scale since, like the 60s. And now we are paying the cost of this kind of biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, all this kind of manifest climate change that we are witnessing now. So it's all like a sort of bio engineering. So this is also puts us in the situation that anthropocentrism and the ethical dilemma and its cost on the environment. So as Global South researchers, we have to work also from this broad perspective. And here I would like that we have a coffee break or an eye break for us to delve more into all of the topics that has been discussed so far. Please use the chat box even if you are unable to mute. And this break will be like 5 minutes, and then we will proceed our conversation after that.
Thank you very much. I think we're still right on time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome back, everyone. And now we can begin with a reflection picture and the algorithm interpreting everything of our activities, of our worldviews, of the daily life. We need to reflect and hear after this your insightful contributions.
Actually, I am an AI enthusiast actually, and I love AI, and I think my aim is to be able to develop AI systems, like not just being a user. Like I want to be those type of people that are like trying to use them, and I can say, yeah, I understand algorithm, and there are a lot of algorithms, that can be used for AI, those classification model, regression models, a lot of decision trees and a lot of other models, that can be used. And we can say that definitely we know that the high influx of AI in almost everything that we do and has impacts definitely. And the thing is that, like, for example, I never knew, and there was a laptop that's been given to me by my own organization, and I realized that AI has been incorporated into it. So I wanted to fix my charger, then I put it in the wrong port. And I saw a message popped up on my screen, and it's telling me I put the charger and current is entering into a wrong port. I was surprised. Like, it was shocking to tell you how things are being integrated every day. You just update an app and you see differences, like Samuel was talking about the inclusion of AI in Gmail, where I realized that these days, if you don't read, if you receive an important message and you did not reply to it within 2 to 3 days, it tells you you have not replied this message, for 3 days now, and for things like that. And we could see classification models even in Gmail, where it classifies into spams and things like that. And I know it's AI because it does make mistakes. Sometimes you see important information important mails going into your spam. So as for me, I take my time seriously to check my spams. I ensure every day, just like the way I check my the mail messages, I check my spam, because there's some important the mails, can slip into spam. And for example, like recently I saw an invite, for a conference. It entered into a spam. So I thought it's one of those fake, calls for conference. It was when I checked the site, I realized that it was a real conference, and it's something that I may be interested in. So things like that. So, and we can say that just like Samuel has rightfully said, the AI is making people like not to use their cognitive function very well. People are dumping everything into AI. People are becoming more lazy. But as for me, I can see it in another way, right? Just like years before we used donkeys, now we use car, and we want to use speed trains. A lot of things and I was asking, is it not because we want to be lazy? It's like there is this part of the human being that is always moving towards that lazy aspect of life. The human being doesn't want to do anything. And the truth of the matter is that this is what we are looking for, but then it hurts at the end. Because in some years back, exercise has not like taken much aspect. Like it's not an important topic of discussion that much. But recently, exercise is becoming an important access, because we have invented a lot of things that have made us lazy, and now we are trained our base, to shake our bodies just so that we can become healthy again. And we realize that the chronic diseases as a result of sedentary lifestyle is taking over everywhere and is becoming a trouble and things like that. And unfortunately, we can't use those technologies again to even solve those issues. So I think these are one of the issues that are causing, I think these are the kind of issues that we are going to see later in like let's say in the next 20 to 30 years, where AI must have taken everywhere, and at the end we'll raise kids that don't even think that much, that don't even calculate, where if there is like loss of network, if there is no power supply, where we see people that will be stuck, they don't know what to do again. Maybe a student that has lost internet for a day may miss at submitting an assignment. So things like that, I see.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Japhet, and I'm keeping aware of the time frame. Thank you for your contribution. We will move to the next topic. Yes, Samuel, yes, you can walk us through the rest of the slides. That AI can also have negative repercussions. And as Global South community, we need also to focus on the cognitive sovereignty. Yeah. So back to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mona, and thank you, Japhet, for that. Yes, everything that has use also has misuse, or everything that has use can also be misused. And this reminds me of the problem we're dealing with now with AMR, antimicrobial resistance. And you see, I'm trying to recall the name of, just a moment, what's his name now? Alexander Fleming. Alexander Fleming. Yeah, I remember. One of the things Alexander Fleming warned us about was, of course, he was the one who discovered, yes, there are back and forth about whether it was his invention or otherwise. That's not what I'm here talking about now. But antibiotics, right? One of the warnings Fleming gave about antibiotics, starting off with the penicillin, was the problem of overuse. Right, what happens when you use it too much, and the microbes, right, in the human body or wherever we use these things become resistant. And he told us then that resistance might become an even more dangerous problem for the human species than the disease that was caused, that led to the use of the antibiotics in the first instance. And I think we may be on such a slippery slope again with AI. Cognitive sovereignty, as Global South researchers, what's really going on? Let's pause for a moment and ask ourselves some very important and interesting questions. One of it is the fact that, and I stand to be corrected here, but I believe that AI is not it's not a recent invention. Yes, it's modern, but it's not a recent invention. These different tools and robotics have always been used by governments for more than 20, 30 years now. It's been in existence, but it wasn't mainstream, right? The events that led to Neil Armstrong and the other people exploring the moon was heavily dependent on the use of AI tools in one way or the other. Space exploration has always used AI tools in one way or the other. Advancements in technology has always been dependent on AI in one way or the other. Vehicular innovations, right, has always been dependent. For instance, the use of Bluetooth devices and all of these things. These are all artificial intelligence in one way or the other. And that begs the question, why do we suddenly have this spike in the influx of AI tools into mainstream since the pandemic? Is it intentional? If it is intentional, which I believe it is, then to what end? Why do we suddenly just have it out here? It was always there in 2010. It was there in 2015, but it wasn't mainstream. We had social media, right? But AI wasn't as mainstream as we have it now. Why all of a sudden are we having ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and all of these things coming in at the same time into the mainstream for people to use? Whose knowledge really counts? Is it even our knowledge to begin with? What is knowledge? What is intelligence? Because at the end of the day, you see, the human mind is like a sponge. It absorbs everything that is shown to it, whether it's through sight or hearing or touch or smell. In one way or the other, your mind absorbs everything. Language also becomes a component of what frames the human mind. Very often in the Global South, or most Global South people are not native English speakers. Yes, we have quite a number of, a very huge population of English-speaking people in the Global South. True. But then, what language is being used to create these models? Do we stand the risk of losing indigenous languages in the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years? Because if everything we do is AI-based, what happens if our language is actually not included in the language models? Would we still be able to use these tools, or would we be restricted? And at the end of the day, last week we were in a meeting, and one of the things, very interesting thing people do not do, and that has always been, it's not a recent thing, is that there's this thing they always say, terms and conditions, right? And whenever you go on a website, you click accept. They ask you to accept, yes or no. Do you accept these terms and conditions? Most often than not, we do not read. Nobody has time to read all these terms and conditions. We just click yes, for crying out loud. Why do I have to read 10 pages of different terms and conditions, right? And what these guys are doing is, in this lengthy document of terms and conditions, they put very interesting disclaimers. For instance, on ChatGPT and some of these tools, they say, whatever you put on the platform, whether it's a question or whatever, you no longer have intellectual rights of ownership. And so if you go on ChatGPT and let's say you're working on a very interesting research idea and you're trying to fine-tune that research ideology, and you go on ChatGPT and say, I'm thinking about this and I think it can be innovative and it can change our world. Do you think I can try this or that? As soon as you hit that, in fact, as soon as you start to type that into ChatGPT, that idea is no longer yours. The moment it interacts with this open AI platform, it becomes accessible to everyone else on earth, and anyone can use it. And so if 2 years down the line, you come out and you realize someone has built something using your idea, and then you come out to say, oh, but it's mine, I have intellectual right. No, if you go and you say, I'm going to sue ChatGPT, they sent my idea. No, you never had the right of ownership. The moment you put it out there, it no longer was yours. It became theirs. And there is all of this, with the use of data, the data set that AI requires. Most of these data come from LMICs without informed consent, because we don't even understand, without local ownership, without benefit for us, right? And then you look at what we're dealing with in this age, it looks quite parallel to the colonial era. And of course, I've always opined and that we're in a new colonial era. It's not as though colonialism has gone anywhere. It's just a change in the language. And so the language has just changed. They no longer auction, right? Humans as slaves, but they have other ways to make human beings work as slaves. And then you begin to see, where's the profit from all these things? Where's the profit aggregating? Are the profits aggregating in the global north and the global south? Where is the awareness in decolonization of AI in public health, for example? Do we have any such activity going on? And these are not things that should make us, just so that I'm not misunderstood, these are not things that should make us say, oh, because of all this, I would never use an AI tool. No, far from it. What I'm saying is, we also need to be ahead of the game. Like Japheth said, it's not enough to be an AI user. If the global south would use AI, and bearing in mind that we have the population, how about innovative use? How about putting ourselves at the forefront to control the language, to control the context, to control the kind of consent our people actually give off? Because if you look at the way AI is being used now, for one, I have a concern with the spirituality. The global south is a highly spiritual continent, or a highly spiritual half of the hemisphere. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is that there is a subtle despiritualization in the way you use artificial intelligence, and it's like it's a very gentle resistance. It's just slowly coming in. We need to control how these narratives actually flow around us, and we need to be at the front and direct what people see and what people use. So this is where the global south needs to come to the fore. There's a lot of profits to be made from AI. There's a lot of profiting to be made indeed. But where is that profit? Where is it going to now? As at 2026, January 2026, who is making the most financial benefits? And then you go away from the finance and you begin to think about social engineering, how the mind is engineered by what it sees, as I was saying previously, by what it sees, by what it hears, by what it feels, right? There is this very gentle re-engineering of the human mind. And we're not just losing cognitive, it's not just a cognitive offloading that is happening suddenly. No, it's not sudden. I've always believed that nothing happens in the human world suddenly. Everything that happens in our world is orchestrated and it's organized. And so if we are in this age, then we need to ask ourselves what is really going on. And there is a responsibility on us as humans, whether you look at it as a moral responsibility, an intellectual responsibility, a spiritual responsibility, or otherwise. We need to be at the front of all these things. We cannot, because already as the global south, we have two pandemics that we're dealing with already before AI. One of the pandemic is we from the 18th century, we've always had infectious disease pandemics scattered around the global south. In the last 20 years, there is a surge in non-communicable disease, which is another pandemic that is beginning to, spring up in the global south. And so before AI age, we were already looking down a double barrel pointed at us with loaded bullets. Unfortunately, we are now staring down another one, which would make it a triple barrel, pointed directly at us. And that is the one of artificial intelligence overlaying all of this. And that is where we need to become very aware and very careful, because we need our brains, we need our intellect, we need this intelligence as global southerners to actually balance up in the tables of global dialogues. And if we lose that as global southerners, if we lose that and we cannot contribute to global dialogues, we do not have the intelligence. So, again, in a fluid language, I'm not speaking of intelligence in a crystallized form. I mean, in a fluid language, if we do not have the intelligence to contribute to global dialogues and we allow ourselves to just become tools and experiment, to become lab rats in this experiment, it would not portend anything good for us. And so as a community, the MRN is actually trying to now, advocate for responsible AI use. And we want to integrate this into our community values. AI tools are rapidly flooding, as we've already established, the scientific ecosystem, whether you're looking at writing papers, you're reviewing manuscripts, summarizing ideas, or even ideation, generating ideas. Even when you're just, thinking about an idea and you want to fine-tune that idea. Yes, AI tools are much, much helpful in these things. I'm just thinking, oh, what's the existing gap in this field? For instance, you're talking about AMR. What are the existing gaps in AMR? What ideas can I work on? What's the existing gap in this field of research? What can I do? Yes, these tools are very helpful. However, we're beginning to see that we also stand the risk of using these tools so much that we can no longer think for ourselves. One funny thing I always ask myself is, if Isaac Newton or Michael Faraday or Galileo Galilei or any of these renowned people that we have today, right? Whether even from the global south, right? Interesting minds, people like the let's not go into the names now, so it doesn't look like I'm cherry picking it. But I've always asked myself, if these people were living today, how would they use AI? Right? How would they use? Would it have eroded their capacity for ingenuity? Because the human being is the genius of the universe, at least in our world. The human being is the genius. He is the creator. And we need to be very careful. The important aspect of the human being that helps with our ability to create is our brain, where you can either see it as the human physical brain or the mind. That's the wall, that is the room, the kitchen where creation happens. And so at MRN, we firmly, very firmly and clearly say that we are anti-cognitive offloading. In other words, we are saying that while we embrace the use of AI, we would never allow AI to replace the human brain, which we are seeing today. And we've seen it in schools. Of course, we've seen it in schools. We've seen it in research, right? There's this, in the linear march of progress, the MRN can catalyze these challenges often dismissed in scientific discussions. And whether or not we accept, we need to make faster moves. We need to be driven by care. And these are things that AI would not do for us. We cannot continue shying away from the fact that the last task, or the last it's task that Dr. Mona put up with that very beautiful picture, and she was asking, what do you see? When I saw that picture, it was really funny, because I was looking at all the billboards in that particular slide. You have this person in a car with the map I think it was on a phone, showing the map of the direction, a call ongoing, and then there was so much advert everywhere. And I looked around and I asked myself, why do we have so much around us, but yet so little color? Like, we're losing the beauty of the universe. I remember when I was much younger, right? And I'm walking or driving through the city or whatever. One of the things that I always enjoyed doing a lot then was reading billboards. I love reading signboards, and my mom used to say that. She says, "There's one thing about you," and I tell her, I say, "It's the beauty of the world around. I want to enjoy it." And so we're driving through, and I'm seeing this very beautiful billboard with different shades of color, and I'm saying, "Oh, that's blue, and that's brown, and that's indigo, and that's this." And then you drive past that, and then you see another one. But it wasn't such a bad thing. It was very good. It helped the mind. Nowadays, on a single street, you can see 1,000 billboards, so much information with the same style. The colors are almost repetitive. It's black and white. There's no color. And now when I go around, I carry a book and I tell myself, we've lost the colorfulness of the world in which we live. And now everything is just in black and white. And so now I carry a book with me so that at least I can get lost in a different world, not the world in which I live. I can get into the world of the author, and then I can paint that world, whatever color I choose to paint it into. And so we are in this era where there is a hype for artificial intelligence. But we need to know that, as it's always been with every human undertaking, we're going to go very quickly through the crescendo, where you go up I think it's in the next slide also, you will see it very clearly, would go up very quickly. And you have all these, yes, this one. You have this first period. Oh, thank you very much, Helen. Yeah, you understood. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We go up that pinnacle and then we'll drop down and AI matters and teaching and all of that. And then finally we come to a plateau. The question is, how much will be lost in the process? You know, from the time of the takeoff to the first sell-off to that, the paradigm here at the top, right? Going through all that we must have gone through, the enthusiastic, you know, that push. And I'm enjoying that conversation with Jaffe because I enjoy his enthusiasm about AI and how it can be used and how it can benefit us. But then after a while, what happens? Would it always be like that? Remember, when Facebook became a thing, right, in the early 2000s, when Facebook became a thing, it was like, oh, everyone wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, have you ever used it? No, I've not. Oh, you're losing out on something. And everyone wanted to use Facebook, and it was Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. And suddenly there was this huge spike. And almost, if you were not on Facebook at the time, you were behind the rest of the world. All right. But 2025, how important is Facebook to us now? It's not so important. It's become just there. We've returned to the main point. And unfortunately, we're even now saying, oh, Facebook might have initiated social media and it has impacted our mental health negatively. Oh, you see. And so sometimes it's not always just as rosy as it appears at the beginning. And sometimes there are loopholes or pitfalls to be very careful about. And we need to reimagine our role in this system, right, in the earth. We need to reimagine our role. What is the role of the human being in this world? We are the thought movers, we are the thinkers. We have very important role. And that role, we should not, because of quick shortcuts, we should not lose that role in the universe. It's a mental thing, right? As you see, I was discussing this slide with Dr. Mona, and she was telling me that there is a church in Switzerland, and you see that on your slide. Very interesting one. You see what people are doing with AI. It's very interesting. You just look at that and just meditate and say, wow. But our algorithms, natural forces that we need to abide by. What is the trade-off? When we succumb to so much use of artificial intelligence in everything we do, right? What are we losing? What's the trade-off? Yes, could AI, as good as it is, could it be another golden apple, right? And if we bite on this golden apple, what are we losing? Are we gaining knowledge or are we losing knowledge? Are we gaining intelligence or are we losing intelligence? Right? Are we gaining immortality or are we losing the soul-bound immortality of the human being? Because I've always believed that human beings would always continue to live from age to age. We never die, right? As long as you leave a footprint in the generation that is coming behind you, then you will stay ever immortal. But are we losing that? The theologies of Esprit Saint, wiping out humanity over the next 30 years, right? The godfather of AI predicted this last year. Could that really be a thing? And on a side note, maybe another conspiracy theory. But on a side note, I was in a forum and someone made a very interesting point. He said, have you looked at how artificial intelligence and so much of what it's doing is almost pushing human beings to the edge? Could a time ever come where robots would take over the things human beings are supposed to do, and human beings will become second-class citizens, right? And because robots don't need to eat, robots don't need to sleep, robots don't need the natural activities the human being does. And so you look at a planet like Mars and the exploration of Mars as another planet where human beings can exist on. Do you think robots might be the first life forms in a way in question to exist on Mars? Maybe, maybe not. That's a conversation for another day. But from a planetary health point of view, right, we recognize that while we cannot escape artificial intelligence, it's important to inculcate planetary boundaries so that we are not losing the humane component of the human being, right? Because planetary health recognizes that human health is by and large tied to the health of the universe or the earth in which we exist. And if we use AI as it's being used now, what's the cost? This slide shows that this year AI used as much water as the entire bottled water industry and produced carbon pollution on par with New York City. And there you also see a share of equity investment into US venture capital based companies that are not AI related. And you can see only 29% in the first quarter of 2025, only about 30% of venture capital investments were non AI investments, and about 70% were AI based investments. And that's 4 years ago when the pandemic struck. Look at what it looked like. 85% were non AI venture capital investment, and only about 15% were AI venture based capital investment, AI based venture capital investment. What has happened so quickly? You've seen that shift suddenly. And so something is letting off, something is getting, is being swept off. And we need to watch and be very careful that our planetary health, right, is not the opportunity cost of all this innovation and circular economy, technological advancement, but at what cost again? Is the use of AI, if you look at what is being done, could it, by and large, actually be destroying our universe? And for instance, points to note here, for instance, is the use of electric cars, which people say, oh, it's an AI innovation. One very interesting thing I've asked, and I'm yet to get an answer for the use of electric cars so far, has been this. They say, oh, it helps the climate, right? It reduces carbon pollution and carbon emission on the road. But what I often ask is, but it consumes more energy. And so if it consumes more energy, because if a particular, let's say a city is using about, let's say 2 megawatts of electricity as it is today, if that particular city was to, shift from the combustion engine cars to electric engine cars, what would happen? The amount of energy it needs to generate for charging up these cars would also increase. And so the amount of energy it would need to generate would go from 2 megawatts to maybe 3 or 4 megawatts. What happens? You may not have the carbon emission in the cars on the road, but you'd have it at the site where the hydroelectric plant is, because you consume more water, you would burn more coal. So at the end of the day, the global carbon emission index, would it really change? Most often than not, the answer is no, it will not change. The only thing that would change would be the site of emission. And so we are only taking away carbon from the cars and we're taking it to the electricity generating complexes. And so, and perhaps it would even become more detrimental because you would have people living around such sites. There would be more carbon exposure for those people. And that is one of the ecocidal consideration that we need to, think about. And so planetary ecosystems, when the AI bubble bursts, what would our ecosystem look like? As we've been saying so far, our world is changing. It's irreversible. There's nothing we can do about it. You can see the venture capital investments between 2021 and 2025. Look at that huge spike. It's an exponential jump. And so the question now that we should be asking ourselves is, the next 5 years, what would our world look like? When this AI bubble bursts, what would survive? I love reading. I'm somewhat of a book addict. I love reading. The question is, will we have enough intellectual, intellectual propriety to be able to, write and read and enjoy the things that we currently enjoy in this world, or would things be lost and forever be lost to us? We'll take a moment again to just think. As you look at this AI tools tier list for 2026, which, yeah, almost everyone is familiar with one or two or more of these tools. The question is, how much of these things do you recognize? These logos, these are all logos. When I saw this for the first time, I only recognized two. Since then, I've added one more. And so, which of these do you recognize? All of these are AI tools that are currently being used. Which of these do you recognize? Maybe Japheth would know a bit more about these tools than almost anyone else in this room at the moment.
All right. Yep. And so for me here, I think you've talked about a lot, like you've talked about a lot of things that resonate with me, even apart from this picture. So I would like to go back a little and to you talk about language. I think when we are talking about impact of this at the AI at the technologies and on Africa, I think is a worthy topic, to discuss actually. And I think at the end, if we are not careful, the inequality I've been talking about with Africa being at the receiving end, if we are not careful, we'll be left behind. If we are not careful, we'll be affected in several ways. But then it's also a challenge that just like you have challenged us actually. And for example, I am part of one the data science at the Society for Nigeria. I think the one project they have started last year is developing natural language processing for different Nigerian languages. So we are starting with Wazobia, the major languages in Nigeria. So we're trying to get those languages like a translation, like a translation that could easily be incorporated into AI. And I know there was somebody that developed a pharmacopoeia, right? Like a pharmacopoeia for list of drugs that can be used in Nigeria. And he introduced some of these languages. It means that a person that cannot understand English can still use his own language to read such AI technologies. And I think it's something that as Africans, we are supposed to be deliberate about this, trying to get those languages ready so that anybody who is developing an AI technology, and we can make it open source. But then it's another issue that we have in Africa. Poverty is affecting us in a lot of areas. We are supposed to develop these technologies and make them open source. When we make it open source, it means that anybody that is developing an AI technology can just look at the languages in Africa and just directly incorporate it into those AI technologies. It makes it easier because those English languages, there are a lot of, it's free. They're all open source. It's easier for you to just use it. So I think we need to make these African languages available. I think in Nigeria, we have started doing that. The federal government is also backing the such projects. I think it's something that is worthy. And then you talk about low data from Africa, actually, because AI is highly dependent on data. And unfortunately, we generate low data in Africa, right? I remember, I think last 2 weeks, the Africa CDC is talking about how every all primary health system should have an electronic health management information system using laptops and whatsoever. I just look at the possibility, especially in my country and some African countries. It's a difficult one. We are not talking about tertiary hospitals. I know tertiary hospitals in Nigeria that don't use those electronic the management system. So, and we are talking about even primary health centers. I said primary health centers that don't even have electricity, that don't have steady electricity, that cannot maintain adequate cold chain. We are even talking about having an electronic management system. There are some primary healthcare systems in Nigeria that even communication network is even a problem. So talk less of having an electronic management system. Is a dicey one. So it means there are a lot of data that we don't generate, right? We like using it now to make informed decision becomes difficult. Even the research from Africa is difficult. Low output of research, from Africa. And there was an article I was reading that even majority of researches that has been done in Africa is being done by the people from the global south. Like you could see Samuel, he's there. He has access to funds. he can make research, he can publish. But it's not in Nigeria. There are some felt needs here that if you are here, you can be able to know that this thing like needs to be research, but then it's difficult for us. Poverty, I would say, has become a problem. Economic challenge has become a problem for us. Another thing is electricity. AI is dependent on electricity. I remember there was a time I was training a model. You need your laptop to be charged. If it requires you 8 hours, maybe your laptop cannot do this 8 hours. So you need a steady electricity to train that model. You need a steady network. So those AI infrastructures is difficult. Like even computing power. You need high computing power, for some of these large data sets because, and even storage. So I think I was recently being introduced to the Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft Azure is a platform that allows you to have high computing power, and you can even have some storage. But then have to subscribe. And the larger the computing power, the higher the money. The larger the storage, the higher the money. And I'm from Africa. I don't have the money. So the limitation is there. These are things that that makes us that puts us in a disadvantaged position. We are really in a disadvantaged position, and I think this is a good call. We have to be intentional. We have to be intentional towards this. And the last thing, I think that talk about the environmental impact of AI. This is also a very good topic because I talk about high computing power. So for you to have high computing power, you generate a lot of energy. You need the resources. The impact is definitely on the environment. And you talk about those electric cars. I would say I share the same view with you. So I was even thinking, those electric cars, they use batteries, right? Where does the batteries come from? After those batteries are dead, where will it be disposed? Still impact on the environment. And I can boldly say that there are some wars that are ongoing. It's because of those rare mineral resources that are used in batteries. A lot of wars, a lot of communal clashes, a lot of global unrest that is ongoing because of these rare earth elements that are being used in those batteries. So it's like solving another problem with another problem. So these are the areas that I feel like it has touched me, and I think it's something that we can be intentional about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffet. Very, very much appreciated. And yes, I think we're beginning to come together to a consensus for the Global South, coming to the agreement that yes, we are not shying away from this thing. We just need to find a way to use it for ourselves, right? And for instance, one example of what we may need to do as Global South researchers is understanding that unlike what you see, I've seen it so very often in the North, is the disconnection between humanity and science. And because of this disconnection between humanity and science, there is also a disconnection between science and theology. But at the Global South, irrespective of the religion being practiced, we always agree, or we almost unanimously agree, that the divine or divinity of the universe connects with the soul of the man, which is our humanity, and which is most exemplified in the arts and humanities. And when these two are in sync, you then have an advancement in science and technology. When you remove any of these components from our view of the planet as a whole, right, or in our dialogues around planetary health, you have an unfortunate breakdown, a systemic breakdown. Because when you remove theology, for instance, and you have science and humanity, by that, you also remove the rule book for empathy, because everything of the human being, as human beings, we have in us an innate capacity for both good and evil. It is the divine that controls which of these consciousness comes to the fore. And so as Global South researchers, we have the wisdom to weave our own ancestral strands into the modern narrative in order to forge a future that acknowledges the lessons of the past and guides our path towards the future. And by this we mean, we're looking at everything that's happened in the past, and we're not turning our back on the past. The past, the present, and the future is a single continuum of time. It just keeps on going. We are the ones who have a start and an end. Time has no start and has no end. And so we need to bring this consciousness of the infinite, right, nature of time into our dialogues, and to understand that the universe would always be. The universe goes beyond the earth. It's a galaxy of galaxies out there. Right, and like you see, you're looking at that map of the Milky Way, and look at how beautiful, look at that splendor, and we're just a very little part of it. But at the end of the day, at the global south, we need to define what our realities would look like. There is no absolute reality in the universe, right? There's no absolute. And so reality is abstract and it's perspective based. And so we need to draw upon the different teachings around us to say that, one, we honor. For instance, I remember growing up in Nigeria, we're taught you have to honor your elders. You've got to respect your elders. When you're walking on the street and you see someone who's older than you, you greet, right? And this was almost unanimously taught across our religions, right? You do not, there are words you cannot use against someone who is way older than you. You know, the respect and everything. We need to inculcate these philosophies, right, which has an intellectual balance between humanity and science. We need to inculcate it into dialogues revolving around artificial intelligence and how it's used. And it's been predicted that there's going to be the increase of knowledge, and we're in that age where knowledge is advancing, right? So much knowledge around us, so much so that you could almost sink in the sea of information if you're not careful. But the important thing is we need to be very, very alert to what information is being pushed at us. And the information being pushed at us nowadays are so subtle. And AI is a very good tool of doing in doing that. For instance, I remember I asked ChatGPT a question sometime in the past, and I asked it a question, and it told me as now I'm paraphrasing, I cannot remember the exact words verbatim, but it said something along the lines of, "Oh, because I'm a tool, right? I do not have consciousness and blah blah blah. So I cannot speak very particularly about religious dialogues like this." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much. I understand." But let's just, and as I asked another question, and then I realized that the answer it gave to my follow-up question was purely religious. But it was a reinvented religious position. It wasn't factual, right? It was so much of hearsay from different places. And I was like, hold up. This is neither true, whether you're looking at religion from the Christian perspective, from the Muslim perspective, from the Buddhist perspective. It's like you've taken all the different religions and you've created a new religion that is actually distant from all of this. And so I called its attention back, right? And I said, "Oh, I thought you said you're not a conscious being, and so you do not delve into religion. But this submission you've given me ahead, this part of it is Christian religion, this part of it is Muslim theology, this part of it is this part of it." And then it said, "Oh, sorry, you are right." I was like, "Oh, hold up. So I was right." So you see, that is the thing with AI. Sometimes it's not smart enough to guide and to direct us. And so we are, as human beings, we are the balance. We should be the balance. We should be, the fulcrum upon which these knowledge are propagated. And when we begin to just swallow every form of information that AI gives us, just like Japhet was saying, even with when you use it for research work, I've seen someone submitted a paper and all the references, right? It just didn't connect with the paper. I was trying to search up some of the references, just a few, because I saw some interesting statements, and I was trying to connect and say, okay, maybe I can use this in my own research. Right? It was an undergrad paper that was submitted, and I was going to say, I read this, and it says, oh, for instance, Dr. Mona 2023. So I'm saying, wow, this is interesting. So I go online on Google to try and search the papers written by Dr. Mona, because I'm looking at his reference and I'm taking that title from his reference, and I'm trying to search Dr. Mona 2023 to find the paper where he took that citation from. Nothing. It's not even there. I'm like, Dr. Mona never even published the paper in 2023. And then I called the student and we started talking, and he explained to me, oh, he used, it was, I think, Gemini. And all the references was as Gemini. Unfortunately, what is said in text is different from the citation that is given. So it says Sam is a boy, and it goes and it cites something that has nothing to do with Sam being a boy and just puts a date there. Those are some of the imbalance that artificial intelligence is bringing to our world. And we need to be very, very, very careful with the way we use it. And we need to find that balance of theology, intelligence, and humanism. If we lose that balance, as a species, we would lose everything that makes us human. I would now just flow through these final slides, where the first one is that inherent goodness exists within human beings, and this I say with all boldness, that anything that has the capacity for evil also has the capacity for good. And so if you say that human beings are not inherently good, then you're by extension saying human beings are also not inherently evil. And so, but if you say that we are inherently evil, then you say we have the capacity also for inherent goodness. And you're looking at this indigenous and traditional wisdom. We need to keep all of this secret. We need to, inculcate all of this into our use of AI and how, we use these tools and all of that. Next slide, please. Time is no longer on our side. What we need now is openness to alternative holistic worldviews, or what we call the epistemologies of the South. And indeed, that is what we need now. And this was by Susa Santos. And then I think there was also this by Vandana Shiva, very interesting one, where she says our future is inseparable from the future of the earth. And so it is no coincidence that the word human has its roots in humus, the Latin word for soil. And Adam, the first human in the Abrahamic traditions, is derived from Adama, meaning soil in Hebrew. And so all of these points to the connection between man and his environment. And it's very important that we continue, to keep our environment as holistically clean and sane as possible by planting trees. According to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he says, planting trees, even if the last day was established, is something we need to continue to do. And so we need to keep our world as good and as human as it is. And now, Dr. Mona, I'll hand over to you to take us through this last activity, and I think we can wrap up right afterwards.
Yes, thank you so much, Samuel. And as you can see on the slide here, we need to co-create together the community values of the MRN, and we need to listen to our members attending with us this meeting. And let's start with Japhet, Cosmos, and Delisi. So feel free to unmute and contribute with your thoughts about what values should the MRN hone in this era of AI?
If possible, I'd like to hear from Delise first, if she's here.
Thank you. I think we should use AI responsibly, being responsible of the way we use it in our research. We should not replace AI with our brain, like we discussed it in the first session. The brain is like a muscle. The time we stop using it, it will stop working. So I think we cannot completely stop using AI, but we can use it as responsible as we can. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Delisi.
Yeah.
And Dr. Cosmos, we have just
All right.
5 minutes left, so be as short as you can, just some keywords that we can rely on.
All right. So number one, and never use AI to analyze data, but it could be used to guide on how to analyze that data. And number two, generative AI should not be used completely to generate research ideas, but then AI could be used to refine grammar, language, sequence, or flow of writing. I feel that is very, very important. And then AI can be used in proofreading. Could be used in proofreading, and then AI should not be used in literature synthesis, because at the end, that originality will be missing. And then ensure high ethical compliance in the use of AI. High ethical compliance, especially the issue of you putting the data of individuals into an AI system. So because AI has a way, even if you remove the names of those people, AI has a way of finding who those particular persons are based on the characteristics of those individuals. It could find a way to detect that these are the kind and these are the people. So we should be very careful in uploading your own data that you have collected of individuals, because you have assured them of anonymity and a lot of this. So once you upload it, there is no anonymity because AI can find out who those people are. So I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Japhet and Dr. Cosmos.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mona and colleagues. Yeah, so I will also add my voice to the discussion that has been happening this morning. Yeah, so it's good to embrace the use of AI, but as we all, have shared our opinion, there should be the responsible use of AI. And then the AI should not replace our thinking faculty and then the way that we interact with the data, and then the findings of our research and all that. So whilst you are using the AI, you still need to be able to interact, because sometimes if you are just putting it into AI to be able to give you some information, even for the grammar, sometimes if you don't go through it, you realize that there are some things that it will write for you that it doesn't make sense, or it will change it to the language that the meaning that you wanted it to come out will not be there. So we still need to be able to be responsible in using the AI tools. But I will say, when you use the AI, probably you may have to declare the extent of usage of the AI in whatever research article that you write. I think now most journals, that is what they talk about, or they ask the authors to be able to declare. So it's not wrong to use AI in your publication, but you need to be able to declare the extent of usage of these AI tools, what you use the AI for, and then which sections of the manuscript the AI was applied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cosmos. And now that we have reached the conclusion that the challenges we face are daunting, but also they offer opportunities for profound transformation, let us transform our shared narrative into one of hope, resilience, and regeneration. So with this, I would like to invite again Mr. Samuel to wrap up this session. And you will receive the survey, the post-webinar survey to fill in just as you leave this meeting, or you can find it also on the email. So please make sure to fill in and write all your comments and suggestions for further improvements. Yes, Mr. Samuel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mona, and many thanks to everyone who's been with us throughout this morning's meeting. Really appreciate the conversations, and thank you, Mr. Jaffet and Delis and Cosmos, for being here. Very much appreciate your presence. And just to wrap up, as we've said over and over this morning, AI is here and AI should be used, but we have to use it very carefully. And we have to make sure that we're not losing our own cognitive intelligence, our mental intelligence, just because we're using artificial intelligence tools or AI tools. We need to find that balance point where we do not lose indigenous components of the human being in the use of AI. And one other thing I would also like to mention, which I think might also be helpful, is if you look through the privacy option on most of these platforms, some of them, they allow you to choose whether you want them to keep your data or not. And so for me, I think it might be safer to choose no. It would not be able to keep any history of chats you have and all of those things. Yes, you may lose track of certain things, but it's better. It protects you more. So if you go on platforms like ChatGPT or Gemini, I rarely ever use them. But when I do, I make sure that one of the things I check is to make sure whatever I give to these two, even if it's a simple question, is it keeping that information with it? And so if you go on, I think it's Google, I went through the whole Google platform thing and I went to the privacy and it's a very long walk that you have to walk through. right? Letting it know my location, I disconnected everything because just using Google, when I went into that, I realized that even this meeting we're having now, it was set up to listen in, even when you are not online. I mean, you're not actively using it. You see, these AI things are connected to almost everything on our mobile devices. It listens to everything you say. And you're asking yourself, why am I talking about buying a shoe with my brother? And then I go on Facebook and all the ads I'm seeing is about shoe stores that are around me and all of that. Because the devices are listening to us. And so what I advise is check your devices and go to all these clauses and deactivate everything. Use your location tools only when you need to go from one place to the other, right? And so opt out, and definitely opting out does not mean you become safe. Like the fact that you've said, don't keep any data I give to you, don't keep my location. It doesn't mean that you're completely immune, because there is, to an extent, there is still some underground activity going on. So even when you've done all of this, I mean, even when you've put in all these safety measures and you've tried all this, and you also need to be careful what you put. Don't put sensitive information, pictures that shows, for instance, your location or your house, your face, right? Full names with other sensitive information like passport numbers. Don't put, oh, I'm trying to get AI to do this for me, and then you put sensitive information, your date of birth and all these things, or you put, full data set, like Mr. Jaffet said earlier on, full data set of a study population, and you put everything, including the user this, even though there are no names, AI can piece those information together. And so we need to use it very carefully to, make sure that we do not lose sensitive information into the web. And once it gets into the web, there's no getting it out anymore. And so that would be my submission, and to say that as a global south, we also need to think of innovative ways to use these tools, and perhaps also even create tools for the global south that is not dependent on the global north. And so we need to think of tools that we can make that preserves our indigenous knowledge, that preserves our spirituality, and that preserves our humanism. And so we create tools that actually respect these different components of the human being. And if we have those tools, irrespective of what is happening in the world around us, we would continue at the very core to remain global Southerners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel, and thank you also for sharing your insightful conclusions. And I would like also to hear the learning moments, something that stood for you in any of those topics that we discussed, just very, very quickly in less than 30 seconds. Dr. Cosmos?
Yeah, so what I picked from this is AI keeping track of all the information that you put in, whether you save it or not. I had not thought about that. Normally, what I know is that when you put any information in AI and then you delete it, that is all. So I think someone said we need to be able to go in and then check, all the terms and conditions. So I'm sure that is the first thing that I'm going to check. All the tools that I use to be able to make sure that I remove all, the clauses or the conditions that let it keep the information or the data that I put into these AI tools. But unfortunately, I just also read from Jaffet that sometimes, even though you may untick all those boxes, it still has a way of keeping those information that you put in. So I'm in a dilemma. I think maybe I'll be able to find a way around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cosmos. And lastly, Japheth, in 30 seconds, please, what really clicked for you in what we discussed today in the presentation?
So for me is the indigenous aspect of the use of AI. And I think this is one thing that I keep on learning in this MRN. And I think Dr. Mwana has been talking about this indigenous aspect for us Africans. So I am being more aware about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japheth. And of course, no road is long with good company. And we are blessed to have you with us in this session and as MRN community members. So please, let's keep our conversation open on the WhatsApp group. And remember to write the feedback in the survey that you will find. And always, knowledge is granted from our Lord. So we ask our Lord to increase us in knowledge with wisdom. And with this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.